Hey, thanks for checking out The Solid Verbal. Now would be a great time to subscribe to the channel for college football content all off season long.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildebrandt. That fine gentleman over there is always the illustrious Dan Rubenstein. Sir, how are you?
I'm good, Ty. I made some dough balls this morning. I did a good amount of shoveling the past couple days, not because it's been snowing.
Oh, no.
Just because I've been lazy, Ty, and I salted a little bit because you're not supposed to over salt, and then you can really put a dent in the ice and crack it up and shovel it away. I'm speaking as a very experienced Midwesterner here.
Sure.
But I'm feeling good, Ty. I've been doing some burpees, some squats. I've been doing some shoveling, I'm getting going, Ty. I'm trying to make the best of it when it's cold outside and just lean into warm living.
It all culminates with today's episode. Thank you for stopping on by. As I said at the top, I'm Ty. He is Dan. Don't forget to hit subscribe. We put 2 episodes out every week. We've also got bonus content that we put out over at verballers.com. That is our Patreon. Make sure you also subscribe to the YouTube channel where we post episodes and clips and shorts on an ongoing basis. We're going to continue to do that all throughout the offseason. And last but certainly not least, quickslants.solidverbal.com.
Yes.
We are leaning a little bit more into our newsletter that we send out every Thursday afternoon. I am in the process of writing it now. You were in the process of helping me with a graphic. Hopefully we'll get a few laughs out of it tomorrow when it goes out in the afternoon as we record this on a Wednesday morning. Today's episode, we've got coaching news that we need to hit at the top, namely in the coordinator space. We've also got some moving and shaking, or at least assumed moving and shaking in the world of conference realignment. We will get into that. And then, Dan, we're going to do a draft, are we not?
We are. We're going to draft new coaches, not as it relates to how happy we are to see them and how much we think they're going to succeed at a place, but simply put, the number of wins that we anticipate them maybe winning this year. And so it's a counting stat thing. We are drafting a squad of 5 coaches each, and whoever between those 5 coaches on our collective squads wins the most games, regular season games this year, we'll call it.
Yep.
So out of 12, presumably, although somebody might be playing Hawaii. So I think, is Stanford playing Hawaii? You can bring that up as I talk. So they might be playing 13. But otherwise, very excited for this. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts.
The new coach draft is how we will conclude this episode. Shall we just dive right in and talk about news?
Let's do that.
We have breaking news!
Boop, 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 boop.
Okay, did you see the Brian Ferentz contract thing?
I did. Of course I did. It was great.
Oh my freaking God. TLDR, they put a clause in Brian Ferentz's contract, his amended contract. He's not going to get paid as much this coming year, but the big flashing red underlined highlighted item is that he has to achieve 25 points per game this coming season, or I believe he's going to lose his job. Is that accurate?
Right, and he is not necessarily reporting directly to his father, because that would be crazy, right? He's not reporting directly to his father, and the benchmarks that he has to hit are specifically tied to scoring 25 points a game, but it's not necessarily offense only. It's Iowa scoring 25 points a game. I think the final number was they scored 6 defensive touchdowns this year.
Yep.
And so because of the nature of Phil Parker's defense being so turnover happy and being able to generate so many short fields or just scoop and scores or interception pick 6 type situations, he can score 17, 18, 19 points a game. And as long as Iowa's getting to that 25 point threshold, he's safe or something. And it's so wild because 25 points just as a team, as a scoring average, would have been 85th last year.
I was going to say, it's not exactly blowing the doors off of teams. No,
it's where Arkansas State was last year. So 25 points is not a lot of points. Obviously, Iowa was somewhere in the 18 or 19 point range last year. So that's a thing. And it's just, it leaves so little room for error where you gotta score 40 or 45 a couple times because Iowa's going to throw in a couple of performances, a 12, a 13, a 14 point, or a 14-9 final score. So you better hit 40, 50 points early on, and maybe that's what'll happen. I don't know if did it signify whether it had to be 25 points per game in Big Ten play?
No, I think it was just 25 points per game. So
if I'm Brian Ferentz, who does Iowa have outside of the Cyhawk game at the beginning of their schedule?
Yeah, I mean, that was my thought exactly. Run it up while you can, right?
Who is on that schedule that they could potentially do it? And look, that's easier said than done. They scored 6 or 7 points against South Dakota State, a very good South Dakota State team, but they probably should have scored 30.
They've got Utah State on September the 2nd.
Okay.
They've got Western Michigan, the Broncos, at home, third week of the year. They've also got on here a game against Northwestern, a game against Rutgers. These all seem like games where you could potentially run up the score. Who knows what state Purdue will be in this year? We're going to talk a little bit about Purdue in a bit. But, yeah, I mean, Michigan State, with the state of their defense the last 2 seasons, perhaps there's a candidate there. For my money, this is the greatest thing we've ever had a chance to cover.
Yeah.
We've been doing this show since 2008. The fact that Brian Ferentz has a sales goal, essentially he is a salesman whose quarterly sales goals have been made public. Mm-hmm. And it's going to hang over him. It's going to hang over the whole of college football media for the entirety of the 23 season. This may not be a great thing for him. It's a great thing for us. It's so good to have the 25 to survive, the drive to 325, the drive to survive, just broadly speaking, as it relates to Brian Ferentz and this Iowa offense. I am thrilled that we get this in our lives.
So you have to score 70 points a game against Utah State and Western Michigan. You got to give yourself that cushion. And if you're galaxy braining this thing, if you're a head coach of another school and you have a big lead on Iowa, which is very difficult to do because Iowa's defense makes it a very tough operation, a very tough ask to score a bunch of points. But if you're up 3 or 4 touchdowns late against Iowa, let's say with 7-8 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
Are you just trolling the hell out of them and falling on the ball?
No. If you are a head coach or a defensive coordinator, you're putting in all walk-ons on defense, and you're giving up as many garbage time touchdowns. So Iowa has to keep Brian Ferentz. Yeah. So you want him to hit his benchmark if you're up comfortably late in games. It's look, the good news is if Brian Ferentz is making 3rd and 4th down decisions, especially 4th down decisions, right? Punt or go for it on 4th and 3 and plus territory or something where traditionally Iowa's been a little bit more conservative.
Yeah.
If Brian Ferentz has that ultimate say over this offense, and it's not Kirk Ferentz, which, let's be honest, it's probably Kirk Ferentz's final say, then you're going to see more chance taking because you got to hit the points. You got to get there. You got to find them wherever they may be. Maybe you go for 2 a little bit more often. You got to unearth every single rock, right? You got to squeeze the blood out of every rock to get to those points. And I've said this before. I am positive Brian Ferentz is not inept, that he is not incompetent. Now, is he in this job partially or entirely because of his last name? That's a reasonable question to ask. That's a reasonable conversation that reasonable people can sit over some turkey clubs and have.
Seems totally plausible. Yeah.
I don't believe him to be inept. I believe the vision for the offense. I believe the recruiting for the offense. I believe the philosophy for the offense to be kind of backwards at times, and when a step or 4 is taken forward where they're running some creative stuff and they're going after different parts of the field and they're recruiting a quarterback who can do different things and develop him into something. You get into October, November, they seem to we're playing for something, let's not screw it up by going too crazy on offense, and they pull back a little bit. And so maybe we see less of that pulling back with this.
Well, that would be good. That'd be good. It'd be good if they
took
more chances. Yeah. And I agree with you. I don't think he's totally inept. I think there are real issues with the design of the offense, right?
Yeah.
We did a whole show where we talked about the offensive line is kind of the linchpin for the whole thing, especially the interior portion of that line. And if it doesn't block and if they're not good, the whole thing collapses. That's sort of what happened. And Brian Ferentz has tried to work against that, but essentially it's the same offense since 1999. There's only so much you can do. The game has changed a lot in the last, 24 years, whatever the math is. So he, is definitely playing coaching with one hand, two hands behind his back. We will see what he's made of, though. We'll see what he's made of. I just love the fact that we get this. I keep thinking of like a coat drive, of like a donation drive, where you've got the signage of the thermometer and they slowly move it up as you get closer to the target. Maybe we can have that on screen this year. Every game, somebody on Twitter will be putting something out like that. I already saw there's a Brian Ferentz pointtracker.com and an associated Twitter account, for which I am very grateful. The internet exists. Thank you. I will be a frequent visitor.
Here's the other question. What's going to happen if Iowa is up 27-3 on Northwestern, let's say?
Right.
Middle of the fourth quarter, 6-7 minutes left.
Garbage time? Is garbage time going to be a thing? Because garbage time could be way more of a thing for Iowa this season.
Well, yeah. Well, what happens if they're up 27-3? The game is well in hand. 27-10 with 4 minutes left. The game is well in hand. Iowa has a possession, maybe a short field because of an interception, right? They're starting it from the Northwestern 47, and they're up comfortably. And they say, well, let's just, the offense has been operating well today. Let's keep that going. The reps are important. That, Cade McNamara and all these guys, get comfortable in this offense, and they're playing well today. Let's leave them in there to keep going. And then Cade McNamara gets hurt in garbage time.
Oh, no.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. If there's that garbage time injury, and then we can point back to, was Brian Ferentz doing this just to hit the quarterly sales goals? You laugh.
No, I know. Listen, you're right. I love the idea of, World Wrestling Federation, or WWE, whatever it's called now, has had this for an eternity, the old loser leaves town match.
Sure.
And we've got a loser leaves town clause here in Brian Ferentz's contract, and I'm grateful.
Can we take an Iowa sabbatical, by the way, for the next few weeks?
I feel like we have to.
Can we just look, they're just doing their best, right? The players are doing their best. A number of assistants are doing their best. They have mounted good defenses these past few years. They've won a number of games. I feel like we just need to take
a detox,
a gap month or something like that.
A detox.
Just like let Iowa be.
We'll let Iowa be.
Leave Iowa alone. Let's take a gap.
Let's talk about Alabama then instead.
Yeah.
Alabama made 2 coordinator hires, one of which was Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator for Notre Dame. Kind of came out of nowhere in a sense, but was a big deal. I guess it makes sense. Maybe we could talk about it here. Kevin Steele also going back to the state of Alabama. He was previously the defensive coordinator at Miami. He takes the role with Nick Saban. It seems as if now that staff, at least at a very high level, is filled out for Saban. The Rees news was kind of a surprise. Rees is a guy who is, I think, thought of very highly by other coaches in the industry.
Yeah.
I think if you talk to Notre Dame fans across the board, you'll get mixed response to Rees. I think everybody likes the idea of Tommy Rees more so than they did Tommy Rees in certain spots throughout the course of the last couple seasons. The fact of the matter for Rees this past year was that the offensive line was rebuilding and that he had to deal with Drew Pine. And so he didn't really have the running game to lean back on initially. Eventually that took hold. They were very good at it by the end of the season. They dominated Clemson in that game where they ran for 260 some odd yards. That was kind of the crown jewel of the season. But this is a Notre Dame team that I think got better on the ground. What we have not seen for Tommy Rees is true development at the quarterback spot or at the game-breaking wide receiver spot, both of which he will have a lot more to work with as he moves south to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, right? We will find out very quickly what he does in the passing game. He's going to have to do that. That's just sort of the nature of the beast. He didn't have to. He couldn't really do that last year or even the season before with Notre Dame. He's been very good at developing tight ends out of necessity, perhaps, but it will definitely be a different ball of wax as he moves to Alabama. I did have a conversation with friend of the show, Tim Murray of the VSiN Sports Network. And
Go Mules.
Yeah, our conversation, I'm sure he doesn't mind me kind of putting this out there, my comment was, do we know that Tommy Rees is a good offensive coordinator? And he said, do you think that maybe the greatest coach of all time in Nick Saban is going to hire a crappy offensive coordinator? And my response was, well, this is first off my coping mechanism, but as I thought more about it, he would not willingly hire a bad offensive coordinator. Of course not. But I do think we need to wait to pass judgment for Tommy Rees, because He's been good in the capacity at Notre Dame, but moving to Alabama with more tools at his disposal, we just haven't seen him with that kind of firepower. And I am very curious to see how he organizes it. So,
right.
I like the move for Reese. I think it makes sense. Obviously, you have to take the job at Alabama. I know he has head coaching aspirations. It definitely leaves me feeling a little bit scorned because Tommy Reese was a big part of like this Varsity Blues, us versus Brian Kelly mantra that kind of took hold shortly after he left. But I do feel like we need to wait and see what he can do with better weapons. He just has not had that at Notre Dame. It's a good problem for him to have. But I will take a wait and see approach.
Notre Dame's had good offenses with different quarterbacks in place. It seems like at times they've outperformed their general firepower and talent level. You know, the offensive line wasn't there for a couple of years, seems to be on its way back. Receiver hasn't been there for a number of years. Quarterback hasn't necessarily been consistent, and Ian Book was pretty good. I will maintain that Ian Book was pretty good. I don't know. I don't know Tommy Reese personally. I don't know how he comes across in interviews, and I am positive I've heard the same things you have, that everybody seems to think he's a bright, young offensive mind. My problem with and watching Notre Dame with an experienced Ian Book a couple, 2-3 years ago was even when Notre Dame was moving the ball, a lot seemed difficult.
No.
Like you go back to even big games that they won. The North Carolina game on the road, I think that was around Thanksgiving, an Ian Book game. And then you go back to the Clemson rematch game in the ACC championship game. Big game, a little bit of time to plan. You already know what you're facing in Clemson, and Clemson's going to adjust, and you're going to adjust what worked when Notre Dame beats Clemson. This is the 2020 season, I believe. The issue to me is everything seems so difficult. No. And if Tommy Reese is seen in that like boy wonder, Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan, kind of like finding mismatches and using architecture that, you know, uses personnel groups in very creative ways. I'm not sure we've seen that at Notre Dame consistently.
I think within the very strict guidelines of this past season.
Sure.
And I talked a little bit about this on Discord at verballers.com. Within the very strict guidelines of this season, which was he's got a developing offensive line, he's got a backup quarterback, everybody knows that you want to run the football.
Mm-hmm.
In that instance, in college football, I don't care who you're playing. If everybody knows the run is coming, they can put 8 in the box and they can stop it. They can put 10 in the box and they can stop it. And for a good chunk of the season, Notre Dame was there. And so it was hard early. It got better late as the line developed around the system. And, you know, Tommy Reese learned that he couldn't rely on Drew Pine to get some of the yardage that he tried to get with him early. He stopped trying to win games with Drew Pine late, and that made them better for it.
Also, Nick Saban hasn't hit 1,000 in coordinator hires.
No,
Let's be clear with that, too. And like Josh Gaddis, a co-offensive coordinator, went from winning the Broyles Award and Michigan not missing a beat when he left to getting fired at Miami. That's an Alabama co-offensive coordinator who perhaps Mike Locksley was the reason for that offense shining the way it did. And so Tommy Reese might be a person who sells Tommy Reese really well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think
not necessarily teaching players really well and assistants really well.
I think there's got to be a lot of credence behind the way that other coaches talk about and think about Tommy Reese. Everybody loves him. And so these are guys who know a lot more than you and I will take them at their word. I think that's definitely something that we need to commit to memory. But to your point on the creativity side of things, I think we saw it on the running side of their offense this past season out of necessity. Mm-hmm. But in terms of Ian Book down the stretch, in terms of what we saw from Drew Pine this past season, even the little bit we saw of Tyler Buckner, it was a lot of one read stuff. It was a lot of, is A open? If not, okay, then we'll figure something out. So you see a lot of scramble drills. We saw a ton of that from Ian Book. That's not always a bad thing, but you're going to have to do better at Alabama.
Yeah.
And,
all right. We got a quarterback battle at Alabama.
Yeah.
We have a receiving core that isn't where it was. We have a chunk of transfers leaving, not necessarily all huge contributors. And so it's a fresh start at quarterback. It's a fresh start at coordinator. It's a fresh start on defense with Kevin Steele, who I'm not sold on as being a big long-term answer. Apparently, it's going to be Jeremy Pruitt's job long-term, if you believe the internet. And I don't know, man. It just feels like something's off in Tuscaloosa. Hope to be wrong.
Well, we'll see. More to come on this front. Again, Tommy Rees, Kevin Steele, the two new coordinators. Very quickly, some of the other action in and around the world of college football. Lance Guidry, formerly Tulane defensive coordinator for
3.5 days.
For 3.5 days. He's going to Miami to be coordinator for the Hurricanes.
Very good at Marshall, as you know.
Very good at Marshall. Yeah.
Yeah. As Notre Dame fans know, had one of the best defenses in the nation. They were great on third down. They were very strong in the red zone. They were very good, especially against the pass. I think they had the number 1 pass efficiency defense in the nation. And so, a lot of it can be a talent and opponent and situation thing. But certainly with what Marshall was able to do early on in the Charles Huff tenure, you gotta think good things.
Yeah. Lance Guidry, again, the name, he's going to Miami. On the college football business / conference realignment front, I don't want to dig in too much to this because I know the numbers. People's eyes glaze over when you start talking too much about this. We've had enough conference realignment for an eternity now. But Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff, known here lovingly as George Clavicle,
always
reportedly visiting SMU and San Diego State, potentially as teams that could join the Pac-12. The timeline we've heard for that, just anecdotally, is after they finish up whatever media rights deal they're working on. But San Diego State, we talked to Matt Brown recently, who said San Diego State seems like they're a lock in his view to join the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see where that goes. And in terms of teams that are leaving, Texas and Oklahoma, you may know, we've talked about it a little bit here. We talked about it a bit more in the newsletter. But Texas and Oklahoma have been trying to negotiate a way out of the Big 12 early. They're headed to the SEC. There was some speculation it could happen immediately, though a slim chance. It appears as if that has fallen through. So they're not going to leave immediately. They're also not going to leave early, right? They're not going to leave in 2024 either, at least not at time of recording. Quote, sources said the sides couldn't agree on how to create equitable value. Here's a word for what Fox, the network, would lose in 2024, the equivalent of 7 football games featuring Oklahoma and Texas that command premium advertising. Again, another businessy word. Premium advertising. So it looks as if the timetable, we've been asking the question now for the last season and a half, when are Texas and Oklahoma going to join the SEC? It looks like that's not going to be until 2025.
Yeah. Always remember who's in charge of the sport, right?
Always remember.
It's whoever's writing the checks, and everybody's decided, we're a TV sport first and foremost. No, and that's fine because that's where we all are as sports fans with all of the sports we like. But that's who's in charge, friends. That's who's in charge. Speaking
of TV sports, any Iowa game now is suddenly way more interesting. I know we took the Iowa sabbatical.
I'm on my sabbatical, Ty. I can't comment.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Shall we go to our coach draft?
Let's do it.
That angelic sound that we have, that we bring out of retirement every so often here on the show, is for today's very specific coach draft episode. There are 11 new coaches on the Power 5 level going into the 2023 college football season. Mm-hmm. I suppose there is still time for all hell to break loose and there to be 1 or 2 other ones. But for our intents and purposes here, there are 11 to pick from. We're going to go through and we're going to pick 10.
Okay.
We're going to hopefully judge a year from now. I'll set a calendar reminder to go back and add up all the wins, all the regular season wins, each of our coach teams accumulate over the course of the new season. And then maybe next year we can have some sort of themed bet. I don't know. Maybe throughout the course of this episode or throughout the course of the season, we can come up with the actual stakes for these teams that we are about to draft. But we're each going to draft 5. We're not going to draft Zach Arnett, if you're cool with that.
I'm fine with that. I think he'll be okay this season, just in terms of where the roster seems to be. And I like his hires some, but his very specific situation is unique enough. We're like, man, this could go in a number of directions. So I'm okay with that.
It's so unique and it's such a different set of circumstances that I just don't want to go there with this. Sure. But we do have 10 other names, those being Matt Rhule, Luke Fickell, Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, Hugh Freeze at Auburn, Jeff Brom at Louisville, Brent Key, Georgia Tech, Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State, Ryan Walters, Purdue, Scott Satterfield, Cincinnati, and Troy Taylor at Stanford. We're going to take turns picking.
Back and forth or snake?
What do you think? What are you feeling today?
I'm back and forth is fine with me.
Back and forth. I will flip this college football playoff coaster that was given to me for free. You know how I feel about the free stuff we've been given at these spots.
Right.
Call it. This would be heads. The cork side would be tails.
I'll take cork tails.
It is heads.
Okay.
So I get first selection if you're ready.
Yeah. Mel Typer Jr. Your name is Typer. Yeah.
I want Luke Fickell.
Luke Fickell. Okay. Explain why he's the number one overall total wins dreamboat.
Yeah. I mean, he was a no-brainer hire of the cycle.
Yeah.
He was a no-brainer hire of the cycle. I don't know if we knew at the time that Luke Fickell was going to be a candidate for Wisconsin, because for a long time we had heard it was like, he's got this family of 6. He's an Ohio State guy. He would have been in play for Notre Dame if they had looked in his direction. He's a Big Ten guy, right? He's a Big Ten guy. And I appreciate the fact that Wisconsin took the risk and picked up the phone and gave him a call, because it's a no-brainer hire. It seems like it makes a lot of sense to me. Wisconsin's in a good spot. Wisconsin did work in the transfer portal. Maybe we can talk in more detail about that. But 15th, if you believe our friends over at 24/7 Sports, with respect to the transfer portal rankings, 58th nationally in their class of 23 recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we could talk about that as well. But the big thing on the Wisconsin side that I think we always got to look at is, who are they playing in the Big Ten West? Who are they playing? What is their schedule going to look like this year? Here is their schedule, Dan. Can I rattle it off very quickly?
Please do. Please.
Open the year September 2nd against the Buffalo Bulls.
Okay.
Then on the road at Wazoo. Wazoo's lost a lot. As you and I discussed yesterday on Slack, a lot of coaching turnover there. Don't know how I feel about that. Georgia Southern, week 3. On the road at Purdue, week 4. Feels like it could be a 4-0 start. Then, as we get into the month of October, we've got Rutgers, we've got Iowa, we've got Illinois, we've got Ohio State, we've got Indiana. Close things out, Northwestern, Nebraska, Minnesota. That to me feels, even with some turnover, even with some new systems to try and digest, that feels to me, even with the talent on hand, like a 10-win season.
I think I have them at a max of 8.
Really?
Yeah.
8 with that? With what I just read, 8. Who are the 4 teams they're losing to?
Ohio State, Iowa, some combination of Nebraska, at Illinois.
What?
I think you are looking at Wisconsin as somewhat of a finished product. This was a Wisconsin team that lost some dumb games in dumb ways. This is a Wisconsin team that is not stacked with NFL level talent. This is a Wisconsin team that's going to be running an offense that's a little bit foreign to them, and it might take some adjustments with a new quarterback, a new coordinator. I think philosophically, they could start 4-0. I just think, look, it's a step up for Tanner Mordecai. Really good at SMU. How do we know how is he going to translate to this level, to Big Ten defenses? I think it's a fair question to ask with a new coordinator, new level of defenses. That's where I have it. I have Wisconsin at a max. Like, can Wisconsin lose to Purdue? Sure. They absolutely can lose to Purdue. They're going to Pullman, Washington. Now, Wazoo loses like 9 assistants, but Wazoo was pretty good last year and beat Wisconsin. And now they're playing in Pullman. So I'm just not there with like a 10 wins is on the table for so much new and novel. Like, they're going to win at Minnesota?
I don't know.
Minnesota's defense is going to be good again?
This is a 10-win team. I would set the over-under at 9.5.
I don't know about that, man.
I would set it at 9.5. 9.5 makes sense to me. I could see 9 or 10, but it feels like, even with the talent on hand, I mean,
who's Tanner Mordecai throwing to that's scaring you?
I don't know if anybody's scaring me, but I don't know if any of these teams are playing are scaring me either.
Okay.
Right. This is a nice schedule for a first-year coach.
Kirk Sharaka's back. Kirk Sharaka's back.
First-year coach in Madison. I know Luke Fickell's been a coach for a long time.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my pick. I'm glad that you don't respect it. That's fine.
I just don't respect that 10 number.
10 wins. I'm going to jot this down here, and I'm going to set this reminder in my calendar so that I can go back and look at all these terrible predictions we make.
Right.
You're up.
You're up. So this is my first pick.
Your first pick.
I think just because of the schedule, I'm going Brom.
Oh, man, you stole this one from under me.
Schedule's great. Now, they didn't hit the portal like Wisconsin did, like Colorado did, like even Nebraska did or Auburn did. But listen to this. First game, they've got Georgia Tech, Brent Key. First game, Jeff Brom, first game at Louisville. Murray State, Indiana, Boston College, NC State, which should be fine. Notre Dame, at Pitt, both tough. An improved Duke team, tough, but they have a bye that week, and it's in Louisville. A Virginia Tech team that's still a ways away. Virginia, a ways away. At Miami, should be better, but we've seen some low moments, obviously. And a Kentucky team that is hopefully going to be better with Liam Cohen, but new quarterback and Devin Leary, and just not automatic. And Louisville is going to be working in a number of new things.
Yeah.
But I just think there are so many games on that schedule. I'm in on Jeff Brom. I'm in on Jeff Brom long term, but just having some weapons on offense, and we'll see at quarterback. But which is, I gloss over maybe the most important part of that analysis. We'll see at quarterback. But that to me is Jeff Brom always seems to exceed my expectations. And given where the ACC is right now and a chunk of that schedule and who they don't play in the ACC, no North Carolina, no Clemson, no Florida State. It's kind of smooth sailing.
The schedule is fantastic.
I still have a max of like 7 or 8 wins. I'm not going like tie 10 crazy.
Tie 10 crazy.
Schedule's great.
Would you have gone Brom 1 if you had the first overall pick? Would you have taken him?
I probably would have gone Fickell because I do like Tanner Mordecai and I do like Braylon Allen and the pieces there, and I like his hires. Like, I think there's more to like about Wisconsin, but because of the schedule and Virginia's defense got better. Virginia Tech, they're inconsistent, but Virginia's offense was terrible, and now quarterback is. I like the path.
I thought about taking Brom first.
Okay,
and I almost did. I figured he would be there for me at 3, but good pick.
Thank you.
I really like that pick. Let's go. I am going to go Matt Rhule.
Okay.
As my next one up. This is largely, I think, a function of the schedule, which, again, the reason these guys are there in the first place is because the teams weren't good last year. They weren't good last year, and I think in most of the cases that we're going to describe, a full rebuild is taking place. A full rebuild is taking place. These are teams that have been pretty active in the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. These are teams that are trying to reconstitute a squad in their image. So to say that they're all going to achieve 9, 10, even 7, 8 wins is probably a stretch. Yeah. And Nebraska could certainly fall into that category. But I like what Matt Rhule's done so far. I like what he's done. I look at the schedule. They've got Colorado early. They've got a game against NIU, Louisiana Tech. They've got the Northwestern game on there.
Buddy, there's NIU baggage with Nebraska, though.
I know there's NIU baggage. I get it.
Okay.
I get it. But I'm just looking at this, and there aren't a whole lot of defenses that scare me.
Okay.
I feel like Matt Rhule is going to be able to get the pieces organized enough. He will. He is. Matt Rhule is many things. He's not an NFL coach anymore. Matt Rhule is very good at building a program. He's very good. He's proven that he can do it at 2 previous stops in college football, and he's done so by doing the little things well, by building on the fundamental level, build from the lines out. He'll get his teams playing disciplined football. He hopefully will not put Nebraska in the situation that they've been under Scott Frost, where they're constantly killing themselves with dumb mistakes. Mm-hmm. He's just good at coaching that type of stuff out of his teams. So I look at the schedule, and of course there's a game against Michigan, and there are road stops here at Wisconsin and Minnesota early that maybe could be treacherous, but I just feel pretty good about bowl eligibility for Matt Rhule. So I'm gonna go with him as my next selection. Had a pretty good recruiting class. This is like a top 24, 25 caliber recruiting class this past cycle.
Loves an emoji. Ty, you know that about Matt Rhule. Loves an emoji on Twitter.
Yeah, Matt Rhule being more socially media focused or forward than I expected in his since like we last left our hero at a coaching job. I don't remember him being this active and this kind of front stage center, but he's trying to do what he can to make Nebraska more relevant, and I approve. So I'm in.
Yeah, the coordinator hires are interesting. Marcus Satterfield from South Carolina, Tony White. I love that hire.
Yeah, it's a good hire.
You know, having that Big Ten money to buy out a high-level defensive coordinator in Tony White. So they're going to run that 3-3-5. That's so in vogue now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have quarterback questions, whether it's Casey Thompson or Jeff Sims. And the good news, if you're a Nebraska fan, is looking at what Matt Rhule did in year one at Temple or Baylor. Those were completely different situations. You know, Baylor trying to dig out of, you know, a crater of sanctions and transfers away, and the Bryles situation, and Temple changing conferences. I think they'll be fine and competitive. They have Colorado. It's on the road, right? You have Rhule and Deion in week 2, I want to say. I always love that those two teams play each other.
Colorado is, it's in Boulder, week 2.
Yeah. So old Big 12, Big 8 rivalry. So I'm in on what the schedule mostly looks like for Nebraska. My issue is, and I definitely get caught up, and I'm guilty of it, seeing like, oh, you know, ASU brings in all these guys, Colorado brings in all these guys, Oregon, you know, all these schools. Now Nebraska is one of those teams, Wisconsin's one of those teams, and you kind of get locked in on, you know, 20 transfers and from this program or for that program. And I wonder if some of these new coaches are just, you know, the term jag, that's a nickname, just a guy, right? Nothing special, just a guy. I wonder if these schools are jag hunting. I wonder if these schools can sell themselves on, well, he was at Clemson. Well, this linebacker was at Georgia. If he was good enough for Kirby Smart as a recruit, you know, maybe he just couldn't crack the lineup because they're so deep, and they talk themselves into. Now, I think it's good for raising the floor. I think that's great.
Yeah.
But in terms of overhauling what that program is on defense, because this guy from that huge program is coming in.
Right.
I think a lot of these coaches are just trying to fill out rosters and, okay, this guy's 6'5", 235, whatever.
Yeah.
That's great for an edge rusher.
Tall. You can't teach tall.
Can't teach tall. You can't teach long arms. But sometimes you're just jag hunting. Yeah. And I don't know how much that changes the culture and complexion and talent level of a defense as much as it is changing the floor of that defense. You're not fielding a MAC defense at certain spots or in certain position groups. So I'd warn against getting too seduced by, well, we're bringing in 30 guys, 40 guys, and they're from Georgia and Clemson and Texas and Arizona State. Like, well, maybe those coaches at those places were like, yeah, you're never going to play here, so go somewhere else. That's the issue to me of getting too seduced. And that's a lot of me talking to myself with places like Nebraska.
4th overall pick, who are you going with?
Hugh. I'm going with Hugh.
Got to do it.
Going Hugh Freeze.
You got to do it. Your boy, you love Hugh Freeze.
Love Hugh Freeze. That's Hugh me.
Freeze. Love this pick.
Mr. Hugh.
Yeah.
Schedule's pretty good. Open up with UMass at Cal and Samford, and then it gets tough. But you have Vandy on the road as one of your road games, New Mexico State in their, you know, late season break between at Arkansas and Alabama and the Iron Bowl. That there are just wins on this schedule. Ole Miss going through some changes. Mississippi State obviously going through some changes. I think A&M is going to be much improved. But because of that, just that non-conference schedule, if we're just talking sheer numbers, UMass, Cal, and Samford, and then New Mexico State, you're starting probably, we'll see what the deal is with Cal this year, but probably you're just starting with 4 wins. So that's,
you'll take
I'm
that.
I'm not a huge, right, of course. In this game specifically,
yeah.
I like what they've done in the portal, because I think they've actually got like quality rotation guys from other places when you see at the production level.
They were 4th. They were 4th in the 247 transfer portal rankings. They had 13 commits. Their class also finished 17th nationally, their recruiting class, which I think is pretty good. All things considered, new coach coming in, you never know what you're going to get in that first kind of half cycle.
And where Auburn was with Brian Harsin on the trail as well. Yeah.
So I think both of those are pretty big wins for Auburn. And as you said, the schedule, the way that they start out is really conducive to 3-4 wins right out of the chute.
I don't know if I love the Philip Montgomery hire because I don't love come down hires. Obviously, Tulsa parted ways with Philip Montgomery, but he is from that wide open Briles school. But Tulsa was just a defensive school these last few years, it seemed like. But I do like, even if Baylor fans didn't love the experience last year, understandably so, I do like the Ron Roberts hire in terms of like a fix-it coordinator.
Yeah.
Just to get, and not that the guys that they've had lately, Derek Mason, like these guys are good coordinators, but Ron Roberts hopefully is more of a steadying influence. And with how they address defense in the portal and on the recruiting trail, I just think they're going to be a dangerously competent team this year. Even if I don't love Robbie Ashford as an 8-9 win quarterback in the SEC, which I don't, you get those 4 wins and then you win a few close ones. There you are, 7 or 8. So I'm going Hugh Freeze there.
I like it. I don't know who else you would pick because this is the moment at which it gets a little bit hairy.
Sure.
I'm going to go Kenny Dillingham.
Love that pick for you, Ty. Because that was a stay away for me.
There's a lot of steam on Kenny Dillingham right now. There's a lot of steam on Arizona State. They were incredibly active in the transfer portal. They had to be. It was out of necessity. 10th in the rankings, took on 27 guys in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I think they jag hunted, which fine. That's great.
They may have jag hunted, but the big one that they got was Jaden Rashada, who, for the purposes of these rankings that we're looking at, which is transfer portal rankings, which is recruiting rankings, among other data points, I believe Jaden Rashada would go down as a transfer because of the way that they scored this.
Okay.
So it was a big deal to bring him over. He's presumably going to be their starting quarterback, if not right away, before long. They will be playing him at quarterback. It is a bit of a treacherous selection, I admit. I am not as high on Kenny Dillingham as this pick might indicate, but as I'm searching for wins, this one seemed like a good one to go out after. Whenever you have to open up your season against the Southern Utah Thunderbirds, you got to feel pretty good about that. But
okay.
Beyond that, there are games on here against Cal, which I'm not sold on Cal at all. Colorado, not sold on Colorado, even though I'm pretty excited about Deion. I'm just
sure
that seems like a winnable game. Washington State, another one. We referenced it earlier. That seems like that's winnable. Arizona, I don't know if I feel as great about Arizona this coming season, but I think there could be 4 wins here. I think there's a chance at 5 wins here if they can get things organized quickly. That is a big time if that is carrying the burden for this argument. But
sure,
we're getting down to the nitty gritty here with some of these coaching options. I'm certainly not going to take a guy like a Scott Satterfield over Kenny Dillingham. I don't know what I've got with Troy Taylor. I like Troy Taylor as a coach for Stanford, but I don't necessarily like the state of Stanford. The Georgia Tech schedule is brutal again. And I don't really know what to expect from Ryan Walters. So I don't know if I want to take a flyer there. And then there's the whole Deion thing, which I'm sure somebody's going to take Deion. Maybe you'll take him next. But I'm just looking at this in terms of, okay, who is the lesser of all of these 6 remaining evils? I hate to phrase it like that, but you know what I mean. Know what I mean? I do. I think I go Kenny Dillingham.
I am going to go Scott Satterfield.
Really? Scott Satterfield. I'll play the sound.
Please.
I would have picked Scott Satterfield last. Only if you forced me to pick him. He would have been my last pick.
Oh, I would take Troy Taylor or Kenny Dillingham last.
No, I think Satterfield is dead last for me. They are going into a new conference, so the schedule gets way harder.
Great.
There's mass coaching turnover because obviously Luke Fickell left and went to Wisconsin, my first overall pick. And I don't think much of Scott Satterfield. I think he left Louisville because he didn't want to be fired, and he was able to catch on basically across town in Cincinnati. So I think it was an uninspired hire. I don't think he did much of anything at Louisville over the last couple of years except give Louisville fans a headache. And I don't think much of the move. I'm not optimistic.
I don't think much of the move myself, but where Arizona State was and where Cincinnati was a playoff team 2 years ago. And where the Big 12 currently is, which, by the way, they're not only playing Big 12 teams this season.
I understand.
I don't know if you have the schedule in front of you, Ty.
It's a tough schedule.
Cincinnati has Eastern Kentucky. Shout out to the Colonels, but Eastern Kentucky to begin. At Pitt's going to be tricky, but it's not a bulletproof Pitt team.
No.
You got Miami of Ohio, so I always, how I love penciling in MAC wins. An Oklahoma team that will be better this year, but certainly was disastrous at various moments last year.
They're going to get bombed by Oklahoma this year.
Okay.
Oklahoma is going to rev up this year. They're going to get destroyed at home by Oklahoma. Continue.
Okay.
Continue.
They return their quarterback, Ben Bryant. Cincinnati does. At BYU is going to be tricky at altitude. But here's the thing. I think Nippert's a very difficult place to play. It's an underrated home field advantage. I am just telling you, Ty, and as I've told you before, Cincinnati was a Power 5 program playing in the American. They're a Power 5 program that succeeded on a huge level before the American, got squeezed out when the Big East collapsed, and they had to play in the American. They've been a Power 5 program this entire time, basically, other than a little bit of the Tuberville era. So, I am in on Cincinnati as a place that most, if not everybody, can win a number of games. And I don't feel that way about Louisville and Scott Satterfield. I'm not a big Scott Satterfield believer, but in this case, in this situation, I think Cincinnati is a rising tide. I think what you can do in terms of recruiting there, I think what you can do in terms of the home field advantage, and also who else do they have on the schedule? They have UCF and Houston, right? So this is not all last year's Kansas State and TCU's on this schedule. You have a number of disappointing Big 12 teams. Iowa State had no offense last year. And what did Cincinnati do? Well, they hired the fired coordinator of Iowa State. They did do that. I grant you this. But I am still not in on the Big 12. I love the Big 12 being deep and entertaining, and any given week, it's all 50-50. I'm totally with you on that. But also, Baylor can lose any given week to a decent team. Oklahoma State very much, starting Alan Bowman this year, very much can lose any given week as they again try to restart things.
When you talk about British comedy legend Alan Bowman.
I'm just telling you, in year one, Scott Satterfield may be good enough to mislead all of us into thinking he has found the magic juice once again, because Cincinnati can be that place, that culture, that talent level that gets Cincinnati to 7 or 8 wins this year.
Man,
I'm just making the case for selecting him relatively late in this
I'll
draft.
have what you're having, man. I don't know. I just don't see it. I would have picked them last. I think the schedule gets tougher. I am not a believer. We were huge believers, by the way. Huge believers when he took that Louisville job. We were over the moon with that. We loved that hire. Didn't work out. Doesn't always work out. These things
That's fine.
They're not slam dunks. Maybe this one will be better. I don't know. I think I've got such a sour taste in my mouth from the last 3 seasons of Scott Satterfield at Louisville that I can't do it. I'm glad you took him.
I'm glad you took Kenny Dillingham.
Great.
And Drew Pine. Have fun.
No. All right. Next up. Give me Deion.
Okay.
Give me Deion. Let's make it interesting, right?
All right.
Am I on the record for saying that Deion could get to 5 wins? I believe I'm on the record for that.
I have it listed as Deion Sanders max 4 to 5 wins.
Yeah. I think I said at some point, and we cut a video together where I said 4 or 5 wins for Deion. Look, it's just really interesting. If nothing more, it's interesting. And if I'm going to have to watch and track these coaches week in and week out in hopes of winning some imaginary stakes, which we should probably figure out before the end of the show, or at least the end of this week, I want to be on Deion's side. I don't want to underestimate what Deion's done so far. 5th in the transfer portal rankings. No surprise there. Brought a bunch of guys with him, brought his own baggage with him, as he said in his introductory statement to the team. 25 guys, had a pretty good recruiting class as well. Obviously headlined by Cormani McClain, the defensive back, number 1 overall defensive back that was previously committed to Miami, but now is coming to play alongside Travis Hunter. And of course, Deion Sanders, notable defensive back in his own day.
Sure.
It's a tough schedule, man. It's a tough schedule. There is definitely a bit left of the imagination here. If you're taking Deion Sanders, if you're looking at Colorado going into this year, because they open with runner-up TCU, the Horned Frogs, on the road, no less.
Mm-hmm.
The remainder of the schedule, This is what this looks like, okay? Nebraska at home. Colorado State at home. At Oregon, USC, at ASU, home against Stanford. Then at UCLA, home against Oregon State. Arizona at home. At Wazoo, at Utah. Pretty much all of those teams, I would say 80% of those teams are really freaking good. Sure. I don't want to play Oregon or USC. I don't want to play Oregon State. They got better. I don't want to play Utah. I don't even want to play Arizona. I think Arizona is getting better. So there's a handful of teams here that you look at and say, all right, where are the wins? But even Nebraska got better. TCU maybe losing a lot, but still should be pretty solid. Week 1 going up against a rebuilt Colorado team. There's obviously a boom or bust quality to this. Yeah. And by boom, I mean 5 wins. By bust, I mean 1-11. Like, it's all kind of there for Deion Sanders, not the least of which is we have not seen him coach in this level. We don't know how the talent's going to translate. We don't know how the coaching style is going to translate to Boulder. But look, Deion, Colorado, nothing if not interesting in 23. And if we're getting to the point now where we're, 8 picks into this thing?
Mm-hmm.
Give me Deion, baby. I'm in.
Yeah, definitely a jag hunting situation outside of, certainly Travis Hunter is not just a guy. So there is star power there. I like the coordinator hires long term. There's just so much new, but I think, the floor is for sure higher on both sides of the ball, line of scrimmage, especially if any of the edge rushers worked out. That was a priority in the portal. I saw what Taylor Upshaw from Colorado. They've got a linebacker in from Clemson. They're guys on this Colorado squad that at least gives you confidence that they're just not going to lose 35-3 every week.
That's right.
If they find themselves playing against a team starting a backup quarterback, well, who knows? And a number of these teams in the Pac-12 are going to look pretty different this year. So maybe there's going to be an adjustment period for some of them. So I don't hate the Deion pick, and that certainly has a high ceiling because of the talent level at certain spots, and that the Pac-12 is not a conference of out-and-out killers. And so if Colorado is improved and Deion is legit, as he showed himself to be on a much smaller level at Jackson State,
right,
that Colorado could be in that position to just, happen to win a bunch of 2019 games or something. That would be the case to me. He was a bit of a stay away just because I think the variance is pretty high.
Very high.
But I think he's a good coach. I just don't know about year 1 or year 0, however you want to classify this. So I don't mind the pick.
The influx in talent is what makes this interesting. I mean, Deion is a notable personality, and he will be fun as hell to follow throughout the course of this year. I'm with you. I believe he's a good coach. I think he's proven he could be a good coach, and we've seen a lot of notable NFL caliber players go and coach and not be able to reel in the kind of talent that he has. So just by virtue of the talent coming in, they have to be better. I think they'll be better, but how quickly can he get them organized? I don't think the schedule is easy, especially for a team that is going through such mass turnover the way that Colorado is. It's a lot to ask to get to 5 wins. That would be a huge success in year 1 for Deion. But let's make it interesting.
All right.
Deion.
If you're any of these teams on their schedule, what is deterring you from running straight at Colorado?
Nothing.
Every play,
Nothing.
right? That's the issue. It's just what is it about their front as it's currently constituted that makes you think any other game plan is sound at the moment? Yeah.
Nothing. All right, we got 3 left.
Yeah.
The 3 left, you're up, by the way. Brent Key, Ryan Walters, and Troy Taylor.
Yeah, Brent Key is the no-brainer of these 3 to me because of a continuity factor, because as a team who did very little well last year, they still managed to win games with Brent Key against more talented, more together teams like Duke, like North Carolina. Well, Duke was a first-year situation as well, but like North Carolina, I believe they beat Pitt, did they not, last year? So there is something to me about what potentially the culture looks like under Brent Key, that these guys are overachieving. I think there's finally a little bit more stability because there was the last year and a half, Jeff Collins, he's just dead man walking, it seems. So because of his connection to the school, because of his connection to the state, I don't love them at quarterback, to be perfectly honest, bringing in Haynes King, but I still think with where they are, with what they showed themselves to be, and the schedule, while tough, is not impossible to me.
You could find, okay, you're going to laugh at me because you know this is my MO. I do this all the time. You could squint.
I'm doing it right now.
You could find 6 wins on this schedule.
Yeah, I have a max of 5 to 6. That's what I wrote down here.
You can find 6 wins. If they get 6 wins this year, that would be enormous at Georgia Tech. And you're right, they did play hard. They played absolutely hard for this guy. They got better after they got rid of Jeff Collins.
Yeah.
So if he's able to capture some of that pixie dust and bring it with him into this coming season, you can't tell me that they can't go to Wake Forest and win. Who knows what state Wake Forest is going to be in?
Right.
You can't tell. Even Miami. I'm not betting money on that.
Right.
But you got to believe that's a game they're going to have circled. Miami is still one of the, or perceived to be one of the new powers of the ACC. Certainly one of the old powers of college football. They will be up for that game. Who knows what state the Canes are going to be in by then? We don't know. It fell apart quick this year. Yeah. So there are games on here where Boston College, you can beat Boston College. You kidding me? Syracuse, you can beat Syracuse. Virginia, there are games. I'm just listing teams here, but I think you could find wins on the schedule.
Yeah, Virginia's offense does not really wow me at the moment. That game is on the road. But look, they have Clemson and Georgia to finish out the year, 2 of the last 3 weeks. Syracuse's defensive line was extremely shreddable last year. They beat North Carolina, and I'm not a huge fan of where North Carolina is on defense at the moment. Boston College on offense, I'm not a fan of where they are at the moment. Bowling Green, while improved, they should beat Bowling Green. Wake Forest without Sam Hartman. Ole Miss starting over probably on offense and should be good, and they should win that game against Georgia Tech. But at least I think you're right. It's a squint factor with Brent Key and Georgia Tech that makes me a little bit happy that he has a head start on Troy Taylor and Ryan Walters. Now, Troy Taylor has the head coaching experience, just not on this level. But Brent Key, with this locker room, with this head start, being able to essentially pre-diagnose what needs fixing and addressing, I think just gives him a leg up on the other guys.
My turn?
Yes.
I'm going to go Ryan Walters at Purdue.
Okay.
I'll go Ryan Walters. I believe that he should be able to, in short order, put together a good defense in West Lafayette.
Okay.
And with this schedule, if you muddy it up enough, you could win games, even with defense. I still want to believe that Purdue will field a good offense, but we'll wait and see. I feel that he can get 5-6 wins off the schedule. You know, there aren't a whole lot of teams on here that frighten me. There are games against, notably, Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Michigan that are all probably losses for Purdue. But beyond that, you could find wins. Beyond that, you can say, all right, you can easily imagine a world in which they go to Blacksburg in week 2 and they hold Virginia Tech to 15 points. Right? They muddy it up enough against Iowa to win, or Illinois, or Nebraska, or Minnesota, certainly against Northwestern and Indiana. So it's there. I like the hire. I think it low-key could be a very, very good hire. But I think, as always, the case for Purdue is that they're coming into a situation against some of these teams in the Big Ten where they just don't have the talent. They don't have the talent to match up consistently, keyword, against some of the competition. We've seen them knock teams off before. That's not outside the realm of possibilities for Purdue. But to do it on a consistent basis, to expect more than 5-6 wins, I think is a stretch.
Yeah, I was eager to see who Ryan Walters was going to hire at offensive coordinator and less eager about the direction of this offense now that Graham Harrell is there.
Yeah.
I like where they're at on defense in terms of the coaching staff. I think there's promise there, especially when you have Ryan Walters himself on this staff.
Yeah.
So I think Purdue will be fine. I don't know. I think Hudson Card is pretty good.
Yep.
I think that's at least encouraging, but Graham Harrell just underperforms as an offensive coordinator every year. Like, there's that expectation of, like, he's the next, young up and coming air raid guy. And every year it's just West Virginia struggling. It's USC underperforming with Graham Harrell. And I just don't know why it's any different with a thinner offense than what he had at USC and at times had at West Virginia that, again, disappointed and was not able to game plan around a weak offensive line. I'd be in on Purdue this year with Hudson Card and a Jeff Brom offense. I'm just not there with Ryan Walters, which is probably why he fell to this point.
Yeah.
But if the defense is there and the offense is at least okay, yeah, they're going to go bowling, and it's going to look like a good value pick for you.
I mean, an okay offense gets them 7 wins.
Yeah, they're going bowling. Sure.
7 wins, 8 wins, maybe. I've been burned on the whole big name transfer quarterback thing before when we've played similar games where I look and I say, wow, Hudson Card. It was the theory that you just described a few moments ago. This is a name. This is a guy who was recruited by Texas. He's got to be good.
Oh, he was a high blue chip level
He's a
quarterback
big deal.
recruit.
Hudson Card going to Texas was a really big deal. And so this is a big deal on some level for Purdue to bring him up north. And I hope it works out, but I've seen all too often when it doesn't.
Right.
And with the new coaching staff and with there being turnover on offense, I don't know. I think I'm with you. Maybe less so for Graham Harrell, but more so just from they're going to play some like decent enough defenses here. And I'm not sure what state the offense is going to be in.
Yeah. Look, they won 8 games last year. They won the division. They won big games. They didn't lose anything. They had the Penn State game as relatively winnable late, if I remember correctly.
No.
They lose that close one to Syracuse. So we're talking about a program that's not that far away from winning a crazy impressive number of games with the old guy.
With the old guy. That's the thing, with the old guy. And I like Ryan Walters. And I don't mind Hudson Card. I think it was a great move to bring him. It was kind of a surprise when they announced that they signed him. So I get it, and I'm just I'm leery on
the Graham
situation.
Harrell thing doesn't do it for me because I think it's just going to be a worse version of what Purdue was lacking last year. They were not an explosive offense. They were relatively efficient, and the big knock on Graham Harrell is just like hitch, and so I'm not there. But no, I think the ceiling is bowl, and that's a good pick where you got it. Last pick is Troy Taylor, I guess, if we're not doing Zach Arnett, which I would have Zach Arnett ahead of Troy Taylor, to be clear.
Troy, how do you feel about Troy? How do you feel about Stanford as a whole? Not. I think we like Troy Taylor as a hire. I think it makes sense. He's familiar with the area. He did a really good job at Sac State. Yeah. I mean, so there's a lot to like with the hire there, but Stanford as a program, I think, is really the bigger question.
So if you are making the case for Troy Taylor taking Stanford back to bowl eligibility, they needed new blood, they needed a reset, they needed a reboot, they needed fresh ideas, they needed to be more aggressive. Stanford tried to do more on offense last year. I don't think we're built for it. But look, I think this is a more talented team than some of the teams we've discussed above. Maybe not on defense, but I think there's guys on this offense. They've had guys at receiver. I just don't think the architecture of this offense was anywhere near where it should have been these past few years. I mentioned this. They were arguably the most inefficient offense in America relative to talent and intention, that they couldn't run the ball to any degree of success, and they had built a program over the past dozen years to run the ball powerfully, and they failed, incredibly so. So maybe it is the new blood, maybe it is the new philosophy, maybe it is the fact that it's a Pac-12 defense-laden schedule that you can say, you know what, this looks like a team that just threw a bunch of cold water in their face and are ready to roll. They're not in a great place at quarterback. They're never going to be in a good place in the portal because of the academic restrictions and difficulties in getting players in the portal when you need minimum GPAs and situations academically. So that's going to hold Stanford back in the modern era in general. So the case for Stanford is Troy Taylor's a good coach and a breath of fresh air in a Pac-12 conference that does not go up and down with terribly tough defenses.
Yeah.
I have him maxing out at 4 or 5 wins.
Yeah, I agree. And you get the extra game with Hawaii. They do play Hawaii.
Maybe 3 or 4 wins. I don't know.
Yeah, and they play Sac State as well. So
yeah, Sac State's been good.
Have an inside track on that scouting report.
Sure.
Should we call out Zach Arnett quickly since we didn't include him as part of this draft? But Zach Arnett,
I have him as maxing out at 7 wins.
Yeah, Zach Arnett takes over at Mississippi State. We all know the circumstances there.
Mm-hmm.
It is clear that he has a much different vision for the offense. They hired Kevin Barbay away from App State to come down and run the show for the Bulldogs. Notably, App State ran the ball like 40 times a game last year, which far exceeds what Mississippi State did on the offensive side of the football last year. On the ground, obviously, it was much more oriented around the air raid and the system that Mike Leach installed and ran. So how whether or not they've got personnel to run that system, whether or not they're set up to do so, that's always what you like to look for in year one with a new system, especially if you're making such a transition like that. How will that take? I prefer more of a balanced approach on offense if it's me. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it was a keen hire. I like that move, but how quickly it takes hold is, I think, the question that we need to ask. And obviously they're playing an SEC West schedule. So it's not like it's going to be smooth sailing for Mississippi State, regardless of who took over that position. So I like that move. I don't know if you have any thoughts beyond that.
The internal hire at defensive coordinator, Zach Arnett has that background. He's worked with him. So obviously there's trust there. It's just, is it a hire because those above Zach Arnett said we want continuity, so hire within on defense, as opposed to who Zach Arnett potentially really wanted? We'll see. Schedule's fine. And even though they're in the SEC West, it's still at Arkansas, which seems to have a ways to go on defense and loses their offensive coordinator. At Auburn, which still starts Robbie Ashford at quarterback. Kentucky should be better, but they weren't great last year. You have Southern Miss on there. The Egg Bowl is always going to be emotional and difficult, but it's at home this year, if I'm not mistaken. And so the Arizona defense doesn't do much for me. South Carolina, I think, will be good, but they seem to come on later on in seasons. So maybe, that's a tough place to play at Williams-Brice. So yes, I still think there's enough there, especially on defense, to win 6 or 7 games.
I don't know, man. Returning production on defense is low.
It is
low for Mississippi State. It doesn't mean everything. It's just a data point. But it's low. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. 118th nationally, if you believe such stats. We'll see. Here is the way that this thing shook out then. If we're going to put our teams together, mine, Luke Fickell, then Matt Rhule, then I took Kenny Dillingham. Oh, man.
That was okay.
Deion Sanders and Ryan Walters for me.
And then for me?
For you, you've got Jeff Brom. I love that pick so much. You've got your boy Hugh Freeze. You've got Scott Satterfield, Brent Key, and Troy Taylor.
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
I'm
fine with my squad. Tell us whose squad you'd rather have.
Tell us whose squad you'd rather have. Team Ty, Team Dan. Let us know. solidverbal@gmail.com is always the email address. If you are not yet on the Discord server, we would encourage you to do so, going out to verballers.com. Just because there aren't games being played does not mean there aren't people talking about college football.
Oh, yeah.
And really all sorts of college football and just life-adjacent topics. Our Discord is a great place to be. It is a solemn vow of mine, perhaps of yours, Dan, that we want to spend more time in the Discord in the offseason now that we've had a chance to catch our breath. Spend some time out there because we've got fine folks that listen to the show, that comment on the show, that talk about many of the same things that we're interested in. So verballers.com is where you can go and check that out. Just become a certified or premium verballer. That is how you can get access to the Discord server, Dan.
I have nothing to add, Ty. I have some stretching of my lower back. Got to keep it nice and loose.
Foam
some
roller?
hammies,
You
some
doing
glutes.
foam roller?
Of course. The foam roller is behind me. If you're watching this, it's enough of a decoration. You see this orange ridged tube? It's right there on the set. So, yeah, it's great.
Making no bones about it here.
You ever sit on a tennis ball, Ty? That'll loosen you up a little.
No. Yeah, I got something going on lower back.
Not in the middle. Not in the middle.
Not in the middle. No.
Side to side.
Yeah.
That's all.
I got a little lower back thing going on right now here. I've been sitting in this chair too long. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear it, Ty. You have any athletic competition coming up here?
Just the Winter Olympics. That's it.
Wait, is it a Winter Olympics? No, it's 23. Okay. You got ways to go.
Okay. It's never too early to start prepping.
So would day-to-day probable, doubtful? How would you list yourself if you had to compete at something athletically later today?
Probable.
Okay, yeah, you fight through. Okay.
I would fight through. I would fight through. I would end up with back spasms, but I would make it through the competition.
You'd go into the injury tent for a spell.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And they'd spray the magic spray on me that they used in the World Cup, and I'd be okay. I'd make it through. But then, do you have a Super Bowl pick, by the way? This is the last public episode before the Super Bowl.
I know nothing about either one of these teams, but I like Andy Reid, and I think it would be cool if Andy Reid were to beat his old team in the Super Bowl. And I guess it would be cool vice versa, but I'm trying to think if there are any like very big Oregon connections, and I don't think I can make them. So I don't know. Patrick Mahomes is very fun. So
Patrick Mahomes is very.
Andy Reid's from LA, so yeah, I'll go Andy Reid.
I'm gonna go Birds. I'll pick the Eagles. I have Jalen Hurts has grown on me as an NFL player. Again, we're not an NFL show, and I am definitely not an Eagles fan, but Jalen Hurts.
Miles Sanders, Penn Stater.
Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, good stories and fun guys to root for. So I don't know, like maybe we can post on Discord your famed dip, your bean dip. Usually
that's for New Year's. But yeah, I can do that.
We'll post that out there.
Are you cooking anything for the Super Bowl? Are you bringing in?
Don't think so. I found a good pizza place. That's probably my new thing. But beyond that, no.
I think I'm going to make burgers. I think I'm going to go to the butcher, get some good, like a beef blend. And here's the new thing I'm going to do, because I always like to push myself a little bit. I'm going to make my own buns.
Make your own buns.
I'm making my own buns. Yeah. See how they come out. Maybe just some tots on the side. I'm going to make I have a steel that I put on, a steel plate that I put onto the grill.
Yeah.
So I'll make smash burgers.
Okay.
And I got my special sauce. I'm very excited. But yeah, I'm going to make my own buns. Some sesame seeders. Yep.
Send me pictures. I'm excited.
I will absolutely send you pictures, Ty. You know I will. I need to get a butter wheel. You ever see one of those butter wheels? That the wheel is like
there's no way you use enough butter that you need a wheel.
I don't. But they always tell you, like, do not buy single-use kitchen appliances. It's a waste of space, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time. I am all in on single-use kitchen appliances. So you melt a bunch of butter, you put it in like a giant bowl, and then you get like a riverboat wheel that goes in the middle, and then you roll the halved bun over and back on the riverboat wheel, and the melted butter comes up.
Where are you going to put that?
I have no
idea. Where are you going to put a butter wheel?
No, I have no clue, Ty. But I love the idea of single-use kitchen items to make myself feel like the Rob Nen, the very specialized Trevor Hoffman,
the Billy
cooking.
Wagner.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all.
Everybody listening, stay safe out there. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Hope wherever this episode finds you that you're warm and happy and healthy and get ready for the weekend. Verballers.com. If you want to stop on by, that's where we do our bonus brew and A every Thursday going out. You can check it out there. For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, from myself, Ty Hildebrandt. Thank you for downloading, listening, and supporting. We'll talk to you all soon. Stay solid.
Peace.